Imagine waking up and realizing your next paycheck might not arrive. Your rent is due, your groceries cost more than ever, and the bills keep stacking up. But the government, the one meant to keep things running, just hit pause. On the surface, leaders say it's just politics as usual. However, this shutdown isn't just a Washington problem. It's about to hit your wallet, your job, and even your family's healthcare. Most people think a shutdown is simply a waiting game. The government closes, then reopens. Yet that belief is dangerous, because the longer this drags on, the more America's foundations start to crack. So if you want to understand what's really happening and why America may be collapsing into crisis, make sure to hit that subscribe button now. That way you won't miss the truth behind the stories that others won't tell you. Chapter 1. How did we get here? Congress had one job: keep the government funded. Yet as the clock struck midnight, the lights went out in Washington. On paper, the fix should have been easy: approve a short-term bill to keep the government open. But instead of bridging differences, both parties dug trenches. Democrats argue the shutdown is about protecting health care. Millions of Americans depend on tax credits from the Affordable Care Act to keep premiums low. And Democrats say without immediate action, families will face skyrocketing bills as soon as open enrollment begins. Republicans, on the other hand, claim Democrats are manufacturing a crisis, insisting that subsidies don't expire until December 31st. To them, forcing the issue now is reckless. Political theater at the expense of stability. That's the official story. But here's what's really happening. This fight isn't about health care alone. It's about leverage. Democrats sense momentum. They believe public opinion is on their side, and they're using the shutdown to squeeze concessions from Republicans. Meanwhile, Republicans fear that if they bend here, they'll lose credibility with their base and hand Democrats a major political win. Most people assume a shutdown is about money, dollars and cents written into a budget. Yet the truth is far more brutal. It's about power, and power struggles rarely end quickly. And here's the kicker. While politicians argue, millions of Americans are about to feel the fallout in their paychecks, their groceries, and their healthcare bills. So if you think this is just a DC problem, think again. Because what happens next goes far beyond Capitol Hill. Families will be forced to make impossible choices. Essential programs are already starting to crack, and the chaos is only beginning. And what's about to unravel in Chapter 3 will show you just how close America is to a true collapse. Chapter 3. Who pays the price? When politicians say shutdown, it sounds like a political stunt. But for nearly 4 million federal workers, it means something very different. No paycheck. Some are told to stay home, while others, TSA officers, air traffic controllers, even weather forecasters, must keep showing up every day, working without pay. Here's the contrast. Lawmakers in Congress still collect their salaries on time. Families in Ohio, Texas, or New Jersey are suddenly left wondering how to pay rent, while the very people responsible for the crisis keep cashing checks. And it doesn't stop with federal workers. Soldiers and military families face the same fate, serving the country while their pay is frozen. Imagine standing guard overseas while your spouse back home is forced to choose between groceries and gas. Yet politicians in Washington continue their blame game, untouched by the pain. Most Americans assume a shutdown only freezes government offices. Yet the truth is harsher. It drains household budgets, devastates communities that rely on federal paychecks, and forces millions into survival mode. And here's what most people don't realize. The next stage of this crisis won't just cut into salaries. It's about to hit the programs that feed families, protect infants, and support the most vulnerable Americans. The question is, what happens when the safety net itself begins to tear apart? Chapter 4. Programs on the brink of collapse. For millions of Americans, survival depends on programs like SNAP, which helps families put food on the table, or WIC, which provides nutrition for mothers and infants. At first, these programs keep running on leftover funds. But as the shutdown drags on, that money begins to dry up, and suddenly the most basic support systems start to collapse. Here's the contrast. Social Security and Medicare checks still go out, for now. Yet even those lifelines risk delays the longer Washington refuses to act. So while politicians argue over deadlines in DC, parents in small towns across America are already lining up at food banks, terrified that next week the benefits won't arrive. Most people believe safety nets are untouchable, that no matter what happens in Congress, these programs will always protect the vulnerable. Yet in a prolonged shutdown, the very foundation of that promise begins to crack. And when it cracks, it isn't the wealthy or powerful who fall through. it's the people with the least to lose. And here's the part no one in Washington wants to admit. Once these cracks appear, they spread fast. Because if families can't eat, if infants go without formula, if seniors miss critical medication, the shutdown doesn't just stall the government, it destabilizes the entire nation. But that's only one layer of the crisis. Behind closed doors, this battle is about more than benefits. It's about political poker, and the stakes are about to get even higher. Chapter 5: Political Games and the Threat of Layoffs. On the surface, leaders in Washington say they're fighting for principles. But behind the speeches, this shutdown is little more than a high-stakes poker game. Democrats refuse to back down without securing healthcare subsidies, while Republicans insist any deal on their terms would be political surrender. Here's the contrast. In this struggle, politicians gamble with other people's lives. Federal employees are pawns, used to pressure the other side, while members of Congress still enjoy their paychecks and privileges. They call it negotiation. For families missing pay, it feels like betrayal. And then comes the threat that raises the stakes even higher: layoffs. The Trump administration has already floated the idea of permanently cutting hundreds of thousands of federal jobs in the name of efficiency. But let's be real, efficiency for who? To workers, it's not a budget line. It's their future, their mortgage, their kids' education. Most Americans think a shutdown is temporary, that once it ends, everything snaps back to normal. Yet if layoffs go through, many of these jobs won't return. The shutdown then becomes more than a pause. It becomes a reset, rewriting the very size and role of the federal government. And here's the hidden danger. The moment layoffs turn real, the shutdown stops being political theater and becomes structural damage. Damage that can't be reversed with a quick vote. But the real nightmare isn't just job cuts, it's the cost to the entire U.S. economy. Because every day this shutdown drags on, billions evaporate, and the cracks in America's financial system start to spread. And that's where we're heading next. Chapter 6: The Economic Time Bomb. Every single day the government stays closed, America bleeds money. Billions vanish from the economy each week. Federal contracts stall, small businesses that depend on government work go unpaid, and families without paychecks stop spending. The chain reaction is brutal. Less money at the diner, fewer customers at the gas station, more layoffs in local communities. Here's the contrast. A shutdown might look like a budget-saving measure in D.C., but in reality it costs far more than it saves. Credit rating agencies start warning investors, Wall Street jitters ripple through the markets, and global partners begin to question America's stability. Most people assume that once the shutdown ends, the economy will bounce back instantly. Yet history shows the opposite. Confidence takes months, sometimes years, to repair. Investors remember instability, and once businesses cut back, those lost opportunities rarely return. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. The longer the shutdown drags on, the greater the chance of a downgrade to America's credit rating. That doesn't just hurt Washington, it makes loans, mortgages, and credit cards more expensive for everyday Americans. The shutdown may start in Congress, but the bill lands in your mailbox. But the real question isn't just how much money is lost, it's how long this collapse can last. Because the last time America faced this, it dragged on for over a month. And this time, the political divide is even deeper. So how long before this shutdown breaks records and breaks the country with it? That's what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Chapter 7: How long can this last? The longest government shutdown in U.S. history stretched to 35 days. Families drained their savings, businesses closed their doors, and federal agencies never fully recovered. Most Americans hoped that nightmare would never repeat. Yet today we're staring at a standoff that could last even longer. Here's the contrast. Back then, there was at least some willingness to negotiate. Now, both sides are locked in tighter than ever. Democrats believe they hold the moral high ground on protecting healthcare. Republicans fear that conceding even an inch would cripple them politically. In short, neither side can afford to lose. And that makes compromise nearly impossible. Most people assume political pressure will eventually force an agreement. Yet what happens if both parties decide digging in is safer than backing down? Then the shutdown doesn't just stretch into weeks, it rolls into months, shaking the faith of millions in the system itself. And here's the chilling reality. America's enemies are watching. The longer Washington proves it can't even keep its own government open, the weaker the country looks on the world stage. Allies lose confidence. Rivals see opportunity. A shutdown may begin at home, but its shadow stretches across the globe. So the real danger isn't just how long this lasts, but what it reveals, that America's stability is no longer guaranteed. But if you think this is the final warning, you're wrong. Because in the last chapter, we'll pull all of these threads together and expose just how close America may be to a collapse from within. Chapter 8, America on the Edge. So here's where we are. Millions of workers left without pay, families bracing for food assistance to vanish, seniors worrying about delayed checks, and an economy burning billions every week. What started as a budget fight has spiraled into something much darker, a test of whether America can even keep its own lights on. Here's the contrast. For decades, the US was seen as the world's symbol of stability. Yet now, shutdowns are becoming routine. Political games are played with real lives, and the cracks in the system grow wider each time. Most people want to believe this is just another temporary storm, yet the truth is different. Each shutdown leaves scars, and those scars add up. Trust in government fades, financial damage lingers, and America's reputation weakens with every round. And here's the hard truth. If this cycle continues, it won't just be another crisis. It could be the slow-motion collapse of a superpower from within. But this story doesn't end here. The fight in Washington is still unfolding, and the next decisions could decide whether America stabilizes or slides even further into chaos. That's why you need to stay informed, because the mainstream won't tell you the full picture. If you want the real breakdowns and the stories that actually impact your life, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you'll be here when we uncover what happens next in this crisis. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.